Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the previous video, we created a body parts list section, and in this video, we'll work on exercises. So now to fetch data for our exercises, we need to call the API and show all the exercises here. So let's move to Rapid API, and this is the API that we are using. And now we're going to use this API and we will pass a dynamic body part. And if I run this API, for now it will fetch all the exercises for back. As you can see, body part is back. We have a GIF URL, ID, name, target, secondary muscles. So this is the information that we're going to show on our exercises screen. So let's move to our app, and first we need to create a folder for our API. So let's create a folder, and inside this let's create a file exercise db.js. And to call the API we need to use a client, so let's install Axios. Open the terminal and write npm install Axios. Okay, it's installed. Now you can close the terminal and minimize it. Now we won't be able to call this API without an API key. So if we look at the code snippet, you will see it automatically pulls an API from our account. So this is the API key. Let's just copy this and let's paste it in our constants. You'll need to create your own API from your account. This API won't work for you because I'll just delete it after the tutorial. So don't try to copy this because this won't work for you. Okay, this is all set. Now we are gonna need a URL for our API. So this is the URL. Let's just copy the base URL. Let's copy until here. And first we are gonna import Axios. Let's also import our API key from our constants. And let's define our base URL for our API, which we just copied. And next we're gonna create a function to call our API. So let's name it API call. And this will be an async function, and this will receive a URL and some parameters. Now let's wrap our code in try catch blocks. So if we receive any error while calling the API, we will just console log the error like this. Now inside our try block, we're gonna create some options for our API. So let's add a method property, and this will be get, and then we need to pass our URL and the parameters, and then we also gonna add headers. So let's just copy the headers from the code snippet. These are the headers, so let's just copy both of them and paste them here. We just format them. Okay, so this is the rapid API key, and we already have this in our constants, so let's use that. What's wrong? Okay, I think we have an extra parenthesis. Okay, it's fixed. So now we're gonna call this API. So let's create a response object, and we will request the API response using Axios, and we will pass all these options. In Axios we get the data in response dot data property, so we will return that. Now we're gonna create another function to fetch all the exercises, and we will name it fetch exercises by body part, because we are gonna pass a body part to this function. And this will be an async function. We will receive a body part. Now we will call the API call method that we just created, and we will pass the base URL plus the rest of the URL for this API. So let's see what else do we need to add to this URL. So we need slash exercise slash body part slash back. So let's just copy this and paste it here. Now this back property will be a dynamic variable, so let's replace it with our body part variable, and let's change this to backticks like this. And if we get the data, we'll just return the data to front end, and then we will use this data on our exercises screen. So this part is finished for the API. Now let's move to our exercises screen and use this API. So first we need to use a use effect hook, and inside this we'll call the API based on if the data changes in item, and we'll check if we have item. Then we'll call this API. So let's create a new function, get exercises, and we'll pass the body part name. So let's create this function. This will be an async function, and this will receive an item name that will be body part. And now we will call our API that we just created. Wait for fetch exercises by body part, and we'll send the body part. And if we get the data, we'll just console log got data to see if this is all working. And when I save this and see in the console, let me make it bigger. Okay, we already getting the data. That means our API implementation is working, but it's not quite readable. So let's copy all of this data, and we'll use an online JSON formatter to format this data. So let's paste it here and make it pretty. Okay, so this is the data that we are getting. We have ID, body part, instructions, name, secondary muscles. So this is the data for all the exercises for our body part. So we'll use this data. So let's minimize it. First, we need to create a state to set this data. So let's create a state exercises. Set exercises, if I can spell it. And by default, this will be an empty array. And now when we get the data, we need to set it into exercises. So let's comment this out, and here we will set exercises using the data from our API. Now we can use this data to design our exercises screen, but I don't want to call this API again and again for design changes. So let me just comment it, and we'll use the data that we got from this API. So let's copy this data and we'll paste it into our constants in this file. So let's create a variable dummy exercises. We'll use this data until I complete the design for this screen, and then I will remove the command and we'll fetch the data live from the API. Okay, let's move to our exercises screen, and the initial state for exercises will be this dummy data that we just created. So let's paste it here. Dummy, oh, it's demo exercises, but anyway. So now we need to work on our design. So let's remove all of this content because we don't need it, and this will be a scroll view. So let's import scroll view from React Native, and inside this we are gonna use a status bar component to make our status bar fonts light. And after that we are gonna use an image that will be the body part image. And for the source of this image, we already have this because we were getting the data from our previous component in the item. So that will be item.image, and style will be WP. We haven't imported this library, so let's go to home screen, copy this library and paste it in this component. Let's paste it here. Now we're gonna use a width of WP 100 for this image so that it takes full width, and the height will be HP 45 so that it takes 45% of height for the current device. Okay, now we can see the image, and we have this warning at the bottom, failed prop type. um okay, I think it's because we passed the image from one component to another and it was expecting an image, but because we passed it and now it's a number. But anyway, it's working, so let's just dismiss it. And let's add a border radius at the bottom of this image that will be rounded bottom of 40 pixels, and let's save it. Now we have a rounded image at the bottom and it's working, but we still see this error. So let me just refresh the app, maybe this will go away. Get started, go to back. Okay, it's still there, but the image is working perfectly. So what we will do is we'll just hide this warning. So let me see. Here is this warning, failed prop type, invalid prop source. So we'll go to our layout file, and here we'll just import a component log box from React Native, and we'll use a function ignore logs, and this will be an array, and the first item will be this warning that we're getting. So let's just copy this warning until this, and we'll just paste it here. Okay, so our warning is gone and is fixed. So let's move to our exercises component and start designing again. Now after this image, we are gonna use a touchable opacity that will be a back button to display on top of this image. So let's import touchable opacity and let's give it a class name. Let's use a background color of rose 500 and a margin horizontal of 4, and we need to make it absolute so that it goes over the image, and rounded full to make it round. Now inside this touchable opacity we are gonna display an icon for the back button. So let's move to our vector icons and search for back icons. Okay, so the icon that I want to use is from Ionicons, and we can use carrot back or carrot back outline. So let's use this. And first we need to import the icon library. We have already used it in home screen, so let's just copy this here, and we need to copy the import statement as well. So let's copy this line into here. Okay, so now we can save it and we will see a notifications icon at the top that you can see here. So let's change this name to carrot back outline icon. So let's paste it here. Now let's give it a height and width for the container of this icon. So let's use the height as HP 5.5 and same for the width, HP 5.5 as well. And we're gonna add a margin top because we're not using safe area view. So let's add a margin top of 7%, and let's increase the size for this icon to HP4 and the color will be white. Okay, now we need to make it centered. So let's add classes for flex, justify center, and item center. Okay, it still looks a little off, so let's add a padding right of 1. Okay, now it looks good. So now when we press on it, it should go back to previous screen. So when we add on press method, we need to use our router to use back method, and this will take us back to the previous screen. So if I click it, we are moving back to the previous screen and it's working on all the cards. Okay, great. So next we're gonna add a body part name and list of all the exercises for this body part. So this will be exercises comment, and let's add a view. Give it a class name of margin horizontal of 4, spacing vertical of let's say 3, and a margin top of 4 as well. And let's add a text view that will say item dot name because that's the name of the body part, and exercises. And when I save this, we will see back exercises. Now let's give it a responsive font size of HP3, and let's save it. Now it's big. Now let's add a class name to make it semi bold. So let's use font semi bold, and the text for this color will be neutral 700, like this. Okay, so next we're gonna add an exercise list. So let's add a view and give it a margin bottom of 10. And inside this, we're gonna add another component to show a list of all the exercises. So let's create a new file in components, and this will be exercise list.jsx. Let's create a functional component, and we'll use this in here, exercise list, and we're gonna pass the data as exercises. And these exercises will be from our API data. But for now, as you can see, if I scroll up, you will see these are the demo exercises that we are using. But when we finish the design, we will use our API and then we'll set this data from our API data. So let's move to exercise list and start designing. So the design of our exercise list will be very similar to body parts list. So let's use the body parts code in here, and we're gonna change a few things here. We don't need this text here, so let's remove it. And we also don't need this class name for margin horizontal, so let's remove it. For the data, we will be using data from our props, which we are passing from exercises screen. Columns will be 2, this is fine, and scroll indicator will be false. Padding bottom will be let's say 60. So let's change this to 60. This looks fine. Okay, if this will be an exercise card that we'll create. So let's create an exercise card. And for now, let's just return a simple text view that will say exercise card. And we're also going to use this router. So let's declare a router from our use router hook. Okay, now everything looks fine. Let's save it and see. We still forgot our flat list. So let's import flat list component and let's save this. Get started, go to back, and now we see our exercises card, but we also see this error at the bottom that says virtual should not be nested inside plain scroll view. Okay, so this error is because we used a flat list inside a scroll view. You're not seeing scroll view here, but we used scroll view in parent component. So if I move to exercises, you will see we are using a scroll view here. So actually we're using a scroll view inside another scroll view, and that's why it's causing this issue, but we can fix it using another component. So all I need to do is install this React Native virtualized view. So let's install it, and then we will use a scroll view from this view, and that will hopefully fix our issue. Now let's minimize it, and now we need to import the scroll view not from React Native but from React Native virtualized view. So we don't see the error now. Hopefully it's fixed. Now let's go back and check again. Okay, so we don't see the error. Now let's move to our exercise list and start working on our exercise card. Now in this component, we're gonna receive some properties from parent component that will be item, router, and the index of the item. Now let's remove this text, and here we're gonna return a view. And inside this view, we're gonna use a touchable opacity. Let's give it a class name as well, and we will use class flex and a padding vertical of 3 and a spacing vertical of 2 between the content. Now we'll add another view as a container for our image. So let's give it a class name of background neutral 200 shadow, and it should be rounded by 25 pixels. We need to add this because I was trying to add a shadow on the image and it wasn't working. I was getting a warning that I need to set a background color to have a shadow. So I just figured if I create a view and give it a background color and a shadow, this will work, and it worked. So we'll not use this regular image component. Instead, we'll use a different component to show our images, and that's called Expo image. And the benefit of using Expo image is that it also caches the image, and it won't have to load the image again and again, and it will increase the performance as well. So let's install it, and let's also copy the import statement. So here is the import statement. Let's copy it and paste it here. Now this is finished. Now let's close it and minimize it. Now we can use this Expo image. Now the first property will be a source, and because this is a URL, so we will pass it in URI and use GIF URL. And this property is coming from our exercises data, so we pass this data to this component from exercises. And for now we are using this demo exercises, and if I go to it, you will see each item has this GIF URL that we are using. We are using this demo data for now, but we'll replace it with the API data. So let's move back and add more properties to this image component. Content fit. Why it's not suggesting? Because we have two images. Okay, let's remove this. Let's add content fit property that will be cover, and let's use a style for this image. And let's use a width of WP 44. We need to import this library, so let's go to home screen and copy our responsive library and paste it here. Now let's give it a width of WP 44 and a height of WP 52, and let's make it rounded using the class name rounded of 25 pixels, and let's close it and save it. Okay, we can see all the exercises and it's a list, so we can scroll through all of the exercises and they're looking good. Only except this image, because I think this already have a gray background, so we can't really do anything about this. So now we're gonna add the name of the exercises at the bottom of this image. So let's add a text view and let's style it and give this a font size of HP 1.7. Let's give it a class name. We want to make it neutral 700 and font semi bold, margin left of 1, and a tracking, which will be the spacing between the letters will be wide. Let's close it, and in here we're gonna use item.name. That will be the exercise name. So we can see the name for all the exercises, but some exercises will have a longer name. So what we will do is we will split the name if the name of the exercises exceeds the length of 20 characters, and if it does, then we will just slice it and we will only show first 20 characters plus 3 dots, and if the name is short we will just show the name. Let's save this, and this section is done, and now we are showing all the exercises in a list, but we're not showing all the data in each exercise. We had the name, targets, secondary muscle, and all the instruction how to perform this exercise. So what we'll do is when we click on this card, we want to open a model that will show all the exercise details. So let's add on press method on this touchable opacity, and this will push a new screen in router, and the path name for that will be exercise details, and we will create this screen shortly. And for the data we need to pass item as the exercise data in the params. So now we need to create this exercise details screen, so let's move to our app and create this new file, exercise details. It automatically creates this route for us, so let's create a functional component. Now we want to get the item data that we passed to this component from here, and we were already getting the data in exercises screen, so let's just use the code from here. Let's copy these two lines. This will get us the data for exercise and paste them here, and just import this use local search params. Okay, so this will get us the data and we'll console log it. Now I want to create this screen as a model, so for that let's go to our layout file, and inside this let's just copy this line and we'll change this to exercise details, and I want to make it a model, not a full screen model. Okay, now let's go to our exercise list, um, not exercises, exercise list in here. And now when I click on each card, it should open a model for exercises and we should be getting the item data in that screen. Okay, it's working. Now if you remember, we were using dummy data for our exercises list because we fetched the data from API and we saved it, and then we were using it to design this screen. Now that this design is complete, we can go back and use the API data. So let's go to exercises screen, and in here let's uncomment this line, and this will be an empty array, and also let's comment this console log as well. And now when I save this, we will be getting actual data from API. So we are getting the exercises for back, and as you can see, if I open other body parts like lower arms, this will show all the exercises for lower arms. And similarly, you can scroll through all of the exercise or go to other body parts and check all their exercises. Okay, so we have completed our exercises design, and now we are getting the data from API. We are no longer using dummy data. So in the next video, we'll work on exercise details model, and then we'll add animations in our app. We'll be using layout animations from React Native Reanimated. Make sure you like the video and subscribe the channel. So this is it for this video. See you in the next one.